My name is Richard Hale, but my son used to call me Dad, and everyone else knew me as Grandpa Rick. I'm 68 years old, and on what should have felt like a second chance, Christmas night, standing outside my son's front door, everything I hoped for began to unravel. For an entire year, there had been nothing. No calls, no visits, no explanations. Then, out of nowhere, the invitation came. A simple message. Polite. Careful. Almost warm. I told myself it meant forgiveness. I told myself families come back together at Christmas. I was wrong. The moment I stepped inside, I felt it. The way conversations stopped and restarted. The way eyes followed me instead of meeting mine. Tonight, I'm going to tell you what my family did to me. How a long silence wasn't distance at all. It was preparation. And how that Christmas dinner wasn't about reconciliation. It was about something they needed from me, and assumed I'd give without question. But before I continue, let me ask you, have you ever walked into a room and realized the decision had already been made for you? Tell me where you're watching from in the comments. To everyone who shares their time and their stories here, thank you. Your support reminds me that being pushed aside doesn't make you invisible. And if this is your first time here, consider subscribing. This channel exists so stories like mine don't stay buried under polite smiles and holiday music. Now, let me tell you what they asked of me at that table, why the silence suddenly made sense, and what I chose to do before the night was over. The text message arrived on December 18th at 2:47 in the afternoon. I remember the exact time because I'd been staring at my phone for months, willing it to light up with my son's name. When it finally did, my coffee went cold in my hand. Dad, Christmas dinner at our place, 6 p.m. Calla really wants to see you. That's all it said. No, I miss you. No, I'm sorry. Just my daughter-in-law's name, like she was the bridge I needed to cross to get back to my own son. I read it 17 times before my hands stopped shaking enough to type back. I'll be there. Thank you. 372 days. That's how long the silence had lasted. I know because I counted every single one of them in the beginning, back when I still thought Holt would call any day and we'd laugh about the whole stupid argument like it never happened. But days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. And eventually, I stopped leaving voicemails that went unanswered. I stopped driving past their house hoping to catch him outside. I stopped pretending the silence was temporary. The fight that started it all wasn't even that bad. At least, I didn't think so at the time. It was at their 4th of July barbecue last year. Calla had been upset about something, crying in the kitchen while Holt grilled burgers outside. I went in to see if she was okay, and she told me they were having financial trouble, that Holt was stressed, that she didn't know what to do. I made the mistake of offering advice. Maybe he's taking on too much, I said gently. That new car, the renovations you're planning, sometimes it's okay to slow down. Her face changed instantly. The tears stopped. Her jaw tightened. Are you saying we're irresponsible? No, I'm just... You think we can't manage our own lives? Before I could explain, Holt walked in. Calla turned to him with those same tears, suddenly flowing again, and said I'd been criticizing them, judging their choices, making her feel small. Dad, Holt said, his voice cold in a way I'd never heard before. Why do you always do this? Do what? Make everything about what you think we should be doing. We're adults. We don't need your commentary. I tried to defend myself. I tried to explain. But the more I talked, the angrier he got, until finally he said the words that replayed in my head for the next year. Maybe you need to step back and let us live our lives without your constant interference. I left that night thinking we'd cool off and talk it through like we always did. But he never called. I tried reaching out after a week, then 2 weeks, then a month. Nothing. By September, I started wondering if I'd ever hear his voice again. So, when that text came in December, cold and formal but still an invitation, I didn't hesitate. I didn't question it. I didn't even care that it felt strange. I just wanted my son back. The days leading up to Christmas were torture. I must have changed my outfit 6 times that morning, settling finally on a navy sweater Holt had given me 3 Christmases ago. I bought wine, the expensive kind Calla liked. I wrapped a small gift for each of them. Nothing extravagant, just thoughtful. I wanted them to see I'd changed, that I could be the father Holt needed me to be. When I pulled up to their house that evening, every window glowed warm with Christmas lights. I could see movement inside, people laughing, glasses clinking. For just a moment, sitting in my car with the engine ticking as it cooled, I let myself believe this was real, that I was wanted, that the year of silence was finally over. I grabbed the wine and the gifts and walked up the driveway, my breath fogging in the cold December air. And when I rang the doorbell, my heart was so full of hope, it actually hurt. The door opened. Calla stood there in a burgundy dress, her smile perfect and practiced. "Richard," she said warmly, leaning in for a cheek kiss that landed somewhere near my ear. "Come in. We're so glad you could make it." Her voice was honey, but her eyes were ice. The house smelled like rosemary and roasted something expensive. Calla took my coat with the same polite efficiency she used with strangers, hanging it carefully in the hall closet like it might contaminate the others. "Everyone's in the living room," she said, already turning away. "Holt's just finishing up in the kitchen." "Everyone?" I followed her through the hallway, my stomach tightening with each step. When we rounded the corner into the living room, I stopped. There were 5 other people there. Calla's sister Opal sat on the couch, wineglass in hand, her expression unreadable. Next to her was a man I didn't recognize. Mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of handshake that meant business. Across from them sat Cruz, Holt's college roommate, who I hadn't seen in at least 5 years, and standing by the fireplace was a woman with sharp features and sharper eyes, holding a leather portfolio like it was evidence in a trial. Nobody stood when I entered. Nobody smiled. "Dad?" I turned. Holt stood in the kitchen doorway, dish towel over his shoulder, looking like a stranger. His hair was shorter. His face was harder. There were lines around his eyes I didn't remember. "Holt," I said, my voice catching. "It's good to see you." He nodded once. "Yeah, you too." That was it. No hug, no warmth, just 2 words that felt rehearsed. Calla gestured toward the couch. "Have a seat, Richard. Can I get you something to drink?" "Wine would be great," I said, trying to sound normal. "Thank you." She disappeared into the kitchen. I stood there awkwardly until Cruz finally spoke. "Hey, Mr. Hale. Long time." "Cruz? Yeah, it's been a while. How've you been?" "Good, good. Busy. You know how it is." I didn't, but I nodded anyway. The man in the suit leaned forward, extending his hand. "Axel Monroe, friend of the family." His grip was firm, almost aggressive. I noticed he didn't say whose friend. "Richard Hale," I replied. "Nice to meet you." The woman by the fireplace didn't introduce herself. She just watched me with the kind of attention that made my skin crawl. Calla returned with my wine and a tight smile. "Dinner's almost ready. Why don't we all sit?" We moved to the dining room, a table set for 8 with cloth napkins and name cards. Mine was at the far end, directly across from Holt. Calla sat to his right. The woman with the portfolio sat to his left. As we settled in, I noticed something. There was a manila folder on the sideboard behind Holt. Plain, unremarkable, except for the way everyone kept glancing at it like it was a bomb waiting to go off. "So, Richard," Opal said, her voice syrupy. "How have you been? We haven't seen you in forever." "I've been managing," I said carefully. "Keeping busy." "Still living in that little apartment?" she asked. Little apartment, like it was something to be ashamed of. "Yes," I said. "It suits me." Calla brought out the turkey, and for a few minutes everyone focused on passing dishes and filling plates. I tried to eat, but my throat felt tight. Something was wrong. The conversation was too polite, too scripted. And then, halfway through the main course, Holt set down his fork. "Dad," he said quietly, "we need to talk." My stomach dropped. "Okay," I said. He glanced at Calla. She nodded almost imperceptibly. "This dinner isn't just about Christmas," Holt continued. "There's something we need to discuss, something that's been unresolved for a long time." "What do you mean?" The woman with the portfolio finally spoke. Her voice was crisp, professional, completely devoid of warmth. "Mr. Hale, my name is Vexa Landry. I'm an attorney." The room tilted. "An attorney," I repeated. "Yes, I've been hired by your son and his wife to help mediate a financial matter." "A financial matter," I echoed, my voice hollow. Calla reached for the folder on the sideboard and slid it across the table toward me. Her French manicure clicked against the wood like a countdown. "Open it," she said softly. My hands trembled as I pulled the folder toward me. Inside were pages and pages of documents. Bank statements, loan agreements, a ledger written in Holt's handwriting, and at the top of the first page, in bold red ink, "Outstanding debt owed by Richard Hale, $127,000. The number swam in front of my eyes. "What is this?" I whispered. Holt's voice was calm, too calm. "It's what you owe us, Dad. What you've owed us for years." I looked up at my son, this man I'd raised, who I'd sacrificed for, who I'd loved more than my own life, and I didn't recognize him. "I don't understand," I said. "Then let me explain," Calla said, her smile never wavering. "Because we invited you here tonight to settle this, one way or another." And that's when I realized the silence hadn't been about anger or hurt feelings. It had been about building a case. And I was the defendant. I flipped through the pages with shaking hands, my vision blurring as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. There were photocopies of checks I'd supposedly written, bank transfers with my account number, loan documents with signatures that looked like mine but felt wrong somehow. The loops too perfect, the pressure too even. "These $5,000, Holt said, pointing to a highlighted entry. "You borrowed it in 2017. You said it was temporary. You never paid it back." "I did pay it back," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I gave you a check 6 months later. I remember because it was right before Thanksgiving." "We have no record of that," Calla interjected smoothly. "Then your records are wrong." Vexa, the attorney, cleared her throat. "Mr. Hale, are you suggesting your son is lying?" "I'm suggesting there's been a mistake." Cruz leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Man, we've got documentation for everything. Dates, amounts. Some of these go back almost a decade." I kept reading. There was an entry for $15,000 labeled Business Investment, Failed Venture 2019. I remembered that investment. Holt had called me excited about some tech startup his friend was launching. I'd warned him it was risky, told him not to put in more than he could afford to lose. But I never asked him to invest. He'd volunteered. "This investment," I said, tapping the page. "I told you not to do it. You insisted." "You convinced me it was a good opportunity," Holt countered. "You said your friend had done his research." "That's not what happened." "That's exactly what happened, Dad. And when it went south, you disappeared. Wouldn't take my calls. Left me holding the bag." My mouth fell open. "You stopped talking to me. I called you every week for 2 months after that investment failed. You never answered." Holt's jaw tightened. "That's not how I remember it." The gaslighting was so smooth, so confident, I almost doubted my own memory. Then I saw the next entry. $22,000 for medical bills?" I said, my voice rising. "What medical bills?" Opal spoke up, her tone sympathetic in a way that felt rehearsed. "After your surgery in 2020, Richard, the hospital sent the bills here by mistake. Holt paid them because you were recovering and he didn't want to stress you out." "I never had surgery in 2020. "You did," Calla said gently, like she was talking to someone with dementia. "For your knee. Don't you remember? You stayed with us for a week afterward." "I sprained my ankle," I said, feeling panic rising in my chest. "I wrapped it and stayed off it for a few days. There was no surgery. There were no bills." Vexa made a note on her legal pad. "Mr. Hale, memory can be unreliable, especially as we age. The medical records are quite clear." "Then show me the records," I demanded. "They're in the file," Holt said tiredly. "Page 17. I flipped to page 17. There was a medical bill from Mercy General Hospital. My name was on it, my address, my date of birth. But the signature at the bottom, the one authorizing payment, wasn't mine. "This isn't my signature," I said, holding the page up. "It looks pretty close to me," Cruz said with a shrug, "because someone forged it." The room went quiet. Vexa set down her pen slowly, deliberately. "Mr. Hale," she said, her voice like steel wrapped in velvet, "are you accusing your son's wife of forgery?" I looked at Calla. Her expression was hurt, wounded, the perfect picture of a woman being unjustly attacked. "I'm saying something is very wrong here," I said carefully. "Half these debts are fabricated. The other half are taken completely out of context." "Or," Axel Monroe spoke for the first time, his voice cold, "you're an old man who doesn't want to face what he's done to his family." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Holt leaned forward. "Dad, I didn't want it to come to this. I really didn't. But Calla and I have been struggling because of this debt. We can't buy a house. We can't have kids. We're drowning." "Then let me help you," I said desperately. "But not like this. Not with lies and fake documents." "They're not fake," Holt said, his voice breaking. "And I need you to take responsibility." Calla reached across the table and took Holt's hand. "We've been patient, Richard. We've given you time. But we can't keep carrying this burden." Vexa pulled another document from her portfolio. "Mr. Hale, we're prepared to offer you two options. Option 1. You sign an agreement acknowledging the debt and set up a payment plan. We'll keep this civil, handle it within the family." "And option 2? I asked, though I already knew. "We file a lawsuit, and given your age and financial situation, I'm sure you understand how that would look in court." There it was, the threat. Sign away my life savings voluntarily, or they'd take it by force. I looked around the table at the faces staring back at me. Holt, who I'd taught to ride a bike and throw a baseball. Calla, who I'd welcomed into our family with open arms. Cruz, who'd eaten at my table dozens of times. Opal, who I'd helped move into her first apartment. And none of them would meet my eyes. "I need time to think," I said finally. "We've given you a year," Calla replied. "That's what the silence was about," I said slowly, the realization hitting me like a punch. "You weren't angry. You were building this case, cutting me off so I couldn't defend myself. So when you finally brought me back, I'd be so desperate to reconcile I'd sign anything." Holt's face flushed. "That's not—" "It is," I said, standing up. My chair scraped against the hardwood. "And I'm not signing anything tonight." Vexa's smile was razor thin. "Then we'll see you in court, Mr. Hale." I grabbed my coat from the hallway and walked out into the cold December night. Behind me, I heard Calla's voice, soft and victorious. "He'll be back. He has nowhere else to go." But as I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, something inside me shifted. They were right about one thing. I was old. I was alone. I didn't have much. But I wasn't broken. Not yet. Stop. Right there. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking I walked away defeated. That I drove home, crawled into bed, and accepted my fate like a good little victim. You don't know me at all. What happened next, what I did over the following 3 days, changed everything. I stopped being the accused and became the investigator. I stopped defending myself and started digging into the people who thought they could bury me. And what I found about Calla, about the woman my son married, it's the kind of thing that makes your blood run cold. But here's the thing. I'm not telling you what I discovered. Not yet. Not unless you prove you're really invested in seeing this through. Because if you're not subscribed, you don't get to see me fight back. Part of me wants to leave you hanging right here, to let you wonder if I just rolled over and died like they expected. But the people who subscribe, the people who hit that notification bell and commit to this story, they get to see the moment I stopped being prey and became a predator. The next chapter is where I call in a favor from someone I haven't spoken to in years, where I start pulling threads, where I discover that my daughter-in-law isn't who she claims to be. And trust me, what I found is worse than you're imagining. So here's the deal. If you want to see Calla's mask come off, if you want to watch me dismantle this carefully constructed lie piece by piece, you need to subscribe right now. Because I didn't just walk away from that dinner table. I declared war. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and drop a comment telling me, have you ever had someone you trusted try to destroy you? I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my small kitchen table until 4 a.m. Every document I'd ever saved spread out in front of me like evidence at a crime scene. Bank statements going back 15 years, emails, receipts, canceled checks, proof that I wasn't the monster they were painting me to be. The $5,000 loan from 2017. I found the canceled check, dated 6 months after the original loan, with paid in full written in the memo line. The business investment? I had email chains where I explicitly warned Holt about the risks, told him to be cautious, never once pushed him to invest. But the fabricated entries, the medical bills, the phantom loans, the inflated numbers, those were harder to disprove. They'd been created specifically to exist in a gray area, close enough to reality that they seemed plausible, far enough from the truth that I couldn't simply wave them away. Whoever had done this had been planning it for a long time, and I was pretty sure I knew who. By dawn, I'd made a decision. If they wanted war, I'd give them war, but I needed help. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found a name I hadn't called in almost 3 years. Axel Reed. Not Axel Monroe, the suit at the dinner table. Axel Reed, my old colleague from my journalism days, back when I still had a career worth mentioning. We'd worked together at the Denver Post in the 90s, covering everything from city council corruption to corporate fraud. Axel had gone on to become an investigative consultant after leaving journalism. He had contacts everywhere, people who could find things that didn't want to be found. I hesitated for only a moment before hitting dial. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice gravelly with sleep. "This better be good." "Axel, it's Richard Hale." A pause. "Rick? Jesus, it's been what, 3 years?" "About that." "What's wrong?" I could hear the shift in his tone, the old instincts kicking in. Axel always could tell when someone was calling with a story. "I need your help," I said. "I need you to look into someone." "Who?" "My daughter-in-law." Another pause, longer this time. "Your son's wife?" "Yes." "Rick, man, you sure about this? Family investigations. They get messy." "It's already messy," I said, "and I think she's been setting me up for a long time." I spent the next 20 minutes walking him through everything. The year of silence, the Christmas dinner ambush, the fabricated debt, the forged signatures. When I finished, Axel was quiet for a long moment. "What's her full name?" he finally asked. "Calla Cruz. Maiden name." "I actually don't know. She never talked about her family much." "How long has she been married to your son?" 4 years. They met at some charity event in 2020. "And before that?" "She said she grew up in Nevada, worked her way through college, some kind of consulting job before she met Holt." "You got a photo?" I scrolled through my phone and found a picture from their wedding. Calla in her white dress, smiling at the camera with that perfect, practiced expression. I sent it to Axel. "Got it," he said. "Give me 3 days." 3 days? "Rick, if this woman is running a con, she's been smart about it. That means layers, false identities, scrubbed records, carefully constructed backstories. I need time to peel it back. I don't have time, I said. They gave me until New Year's to sign their agreement or they're filing a lawsuit. Then I'll work fast, but I need you to do something for me. What? Don't contact your son. Don't respond to any messages from the lawyer, and for God's sake, don't sign anything. I wasn't planning to. Good, because if what you're telling me is true, you're not dealing with a family dispute. You're dealing with someone who knows exactly what they're doing. He hung up, leaving me alone with my documents and my rage. The next 3 days were torture. I jumped every time my phone buzzed. I rehearsed conversations in my head, what I'd say when Axel called back, how I'd confront Calla, how I'd make Holt see the truth. But mostly, I just waited. On the third day, December 28th at 6:47 p.m., Axel called back. "You sitting down?" he asked. My heart hammered. "Yes." "Your daughter-in-law isn't who she says she is." I closed my eyes. "Tell me." "Her real name is Calla Renwick. She legally changed it to Calla Cruz 10 years ago, right after she got out of prison." The room spun. Prison. 18 months for fraud and identity theft. She ran a con in Arizona targeting elderly investors, convinced them to put money into a fake real estate development. When it collapsed, she disappeared. They caught her in Nevada using a false identity. Oh, God. "It gets worse," Axel continued. "After she got out, she changed her name, moved to Colorado, and apparently went legit for a while. Worked in marketing, kept her nose clean. But Rick, her pattern fits. Befriend wealthy or comfortable people. Build trust. Then systematically drain their resources while making it look like a legitimate debt or family obligation." "She's done this before," I said slowly. "Twice that I can confirm. Once in Nevada before her arrest, once in Utah about 6 years ago, though that one never went to trial. The victim withdrew the complaint." "Why?" "Probably paid off, or too embarrassed to go through with it. These cons work because the victims feel shame, like they should have known better." I thought about Holt's face at that dinner table, the way he'd believed every word Calla said, the way he'd looked at me like I was the problem. "Does my son know about her past?" I asked. "I doubt it. People like Calla are experts at compartmentalization. She probably told him some sad story about her childhood, kept the details vague, and he never dug deeper because why would he? She's his wife." "I need proof," I said. "Court records, arrest records, something I can show him." "I've already compiled a file, sending it to your email now. Rick, there's one more thing." "What?" "I found one of her old victims. Woman named Margaret Hines. She's 73. Lost her entire retirement savings to Calla's real estate scam back in Arizona." My throat tightened. "Is she willing to talk?" "I already talked to her. She cried when I told her Calla had resurfaced. Said she'd been waiting years to hear that someone finally believed her." "What did she say?" "She said Calla is patient, methodical. She doesn't rush. She spends months, sometimes years, building trust, making you think she cares. And then, when you're completely dependent on her version of reality, she strikes." I thought about the year of silence, the careful construction of the debt file, the way Calla had orchestrated every moment of that Christmas dinner. "She's been planning this since the beginning," I said quietly. "Probably since before she even met your son," Axel confirmed. "Rick, you need to be careful. People like this don't take exposure well. When you confront her, she'll have a backup plan." "I don't care." "You should, because right now she's convinced your son you're the villain. When you show him proof that she's the con artist, she's going to fight back. Hard." "Let her," I said, and I meant it. For the first time in a year, I wasn't afraid. I was furious. I waited until January 2nd to make my move. Not because I was scared, not because I was hesitating, but because I wanted Calla to think she'd won. I wanted her comfortable, confident, convinced that I'd slunk back to my apartment like a beaten dog, too ashamed to fight back. On New Year's Day, I got a text from Vexa, the attorney. "Mr. Hale, We need your decision by EOD tomorrow. Please confirm receipt. I didn't respond. Let them sweat. Instead, I spent those days preparing. I printed every document Axel had sent me. Court records from Arizona showing Calla Renwick's conviction. Mugshots that were unmistakably her, despite the different hair color. Testimonies from Margaret Hines and 2 other victims who'd come forward after Axel started asking questions. I also hired someone, a forensic accountant named Iris Chen, who owed Axel a favor. It took her exactly 18 hours to tear apart Holt's fabricated ledger. This isn't just sloppy bookkeeping, she told me over the phone. This is deliberate fraud. Someone backdated entries, inflated amounts, and created paper trails for transactions that never existed. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. Can you prove it? I already have. I'm sending you a 30-page analysis that breaks down every discrepancy. Any judge would throw this out in 5 minutes. Thank you, Iris. One more thing, Mr. Hale, she said carefully. The medical bills? The ones for the surgery you supposedly had? What about them? The account number on those bills belongs to someone else, a woman named Opal Finch, same last name as Calla's sister. I finished, my blood running cold. They've been running this together. Everything clicked into place. The coordinated dinner, the rehearsed sympathy, the way Opal had backed up every lie Calla told. This wasn't just my daughter-in-law conning my son. This was a family business. On January 2nd at 6 p.m., I texted Holt. We need to talk. Your place. Tomorrow. Just you, me, and Calla. No lawyers, no audience. He responded 2 hours later. Fine, 7 p.m. This better be good. When I pulled up to the house the next evening, only 2 cars were in the driveway. Holt's truck and Calla's sedan. Good. I wanted this contained. I rang the doorbell, my briefcase in one hand, Axel's file in the other. Calla answered. The smile was gone this time. Her face was tight, her eyes calculating. Richard, she said flatly. Come in. Holt was waiting in the living room, arms crossed, standing by the fireplace like he was bracing for impact. He looked exhausted. Thin, like the past 2 weeks had aged him 5 years. Dad, he said, if you're here to argue about the debt again. I'm not here to argue, I said, setting my briefcase on the coffee table. I'm here to show you who your wife really is. Calla's expression didn't change, but I saw her hand tighten around the back of the couch. This should be interesting, she said softly. I opened the briefcase and pulled out the first document. The Arizona court record with Calla's mugshot. Her real name is Calla Renwick, I said, placing it on the table. 10 years ago, she was convicted of fraud and identity theft. She served 18 months in prison for conning elderly investors out of their retirement savings. Holt's face went white. He stepped forward, picked up the document, stared at the photo. This isn't, he started. It is, I said. I pulled out more documents. After she got out, she changed her name legally to Calla Cruz, started fresh, and then she did it again in Utah. And now she's doing it to me. You hired someone to dig into my past? Calla's voice was ice. That's illegal. Public records aren't illegal, I replied, and neither is protecting myself from a con artist. Holt was still staring at the mugshot. Calla, is this real? She moved toward him, her hand reaching for his arm. Baby, I can explain. Don't touch me, he said quietly. She froze. I laid out more documents. Margaret Hines's testimony, the other victims, and, finally, Iris Chen's forensic analysis of the fabricated ledger. Your debt file is fake, I said, looking directly at Holt. Half the entries are fabricated. The other half are deliberately misrepresented. The medical bills? They're not even in my name. They're in Opal's. Your wife and her sister have been building a case against me for over a year, planning to drain my retirement account and then disappear. That's not true, Calla said, but her voice wavered. Holt, he's making this up because he doesn't want to pay what he owes. "I don't owe you anything," I shouted, and the force of it surprised even me. I spent a year wondering what I did wrong. A year thinking I'd lost my son forever. And it was all a setup. You isolated him from me so you could control the narrative. So when you finally brought me back, I'd be so desperate I'd sign anything. Holt set down the mugshot with trembling hands. "Calla, tell me this isn't true." She looked at him, and for just a moment I saw her calculating, weighing her options, deciding whether to double down or cut her losses. Then her face crumpled. The mask finally cracked. "I made mistakes," she whispered. "When I was younger. I was desperate. I did things I'm not proud of, but I changed, Holt. I'm not that person anymore." "You forged medical bills," Holt said, his voice hollow. "You made me think my father was destroying our lives." "I was trying to protect us," she said desperately. "Your father has money. We needed—" Holt's laugh was bitter. "We're fine, Calla. We have good jobs. We own this house. We're not drowning." "But we could be better," she said. "We could have everything." "By stealing from my father?" The silence that followed was deafening. Calla looked at me then, and the warmth, the sympathy, the careful performance, all of it was gone. What remained was cold, predatory. "You just ruined your relationship with your son," she said quietly. "Congratulations." "No," Holt said, his voice breaking. "You did that." He turned to me, tears in his eyes. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," I said gently. "Just tell me one thing. Are you going to be okay?" He nodded slowly. "I think so. Eventually." Calla grabbed her purse from the counter. "Fine. You want me gone? I'm gone." "Wait," Holt said. "We're not done. We need to talk about—" "There's nothing to talk about," she said, already heading for the door. "I'll send someone for my things." She looked back at me one last time, her expression unreadable. "You think you've won," she said, "but you just took everything from him. Remember that." And then she was gone. The door slammed, her car started, and she was out of our lives. Holt stood in the middle of the living room, looking lost. "I'm sorry," he whispered again, "for all of it." I crossed the room and pulled my son into a hug. "We'll figure it out," I said. "One day at a time." 6 months later, Holt called me on a Tuesday morning. "Dad," he said, "you free for breakfast?" I smiled. "Yeah, I'm free." We met at a new diner that had opened where the old one used to be. Same location, different name, but the coffee was just as good. Holt looked better, healthier. The divorce had gone through without contest. Calla had vanished the day after our confrontation, leaving nothing but a forwarding address in Nevada and a lawyer who handled everything remotely. Opal had disappeared too. The investigation Axel triggered had scared them both into hiding. "How are you doing?" I asked as we slid into a booth. "Some days are good," Holt admitted. "Some days I wake up and can't believe I let that happen, that I chose her over you." "You didn't know." "I should have." "Holt," I said firmly, "people like Calla are professionals. They're trained to exploit trust. You're not the first person she fooled, and you probably won't be the last." He nodded, but I could see the guilt still sitting heavy on his shoulders. "I've been going to therapy," he said after a moment, "trying to figure out how I missed the signs, why I was so willing to believe her version of events." "And what has the therapist said?" "That I wanted to believe her, that I was so afraid of losing her, I ignored my own instincts." He paused. "And that I need to rebuild trust, starting with you." "You don't have to rebuild anything," I said. "I never stopped trusting you." His eyes filled with tears. "How can you say that? After everything?" "Because you're my son, and love doesn't come with conditions." We sat in silence for a moment, the morning light streaming through the windows, the sound of other diners laughing and talking around us. It felt normal. It felt right. "I want to do this every week," Holt said quietly. "If you'll let me. Sunday breakfasts, like we used to." "I'd like that." He smiled, really smiled for the first time in months. "Thank you, Dad, for fighting for me, even when I didn't deserve it." "You always deserved it," I said. "Always." As we ordered our food and fell into easy conversation about work and weather and nothing important, I realized something. The year of silence had broken something between us, but we were building it back, piece by piece, Sunday by Sunday. And maybe that was enough. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about forgetting what happened. It was about choosing to move forward anyway. I looked at my son across the table, this man I'd raised who'd been lost and then found, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. And that's how it ended. Not with courtrooms or revenge or public humiliation, but with two people sitting in a diner, drinking coffee, and deciding that family was worth saving. Some of you are probably disappointed. You wanted Calla to pay. You wanted arrests and justice and a satisfying dramatic climax. But real life isn't like that. Sometimes the victory isn't in destroying your enemy. It's in getting your son back, in rebuilding trust, in having Sunday breakfasts again. But here's what I didn't tell you. 3 months after Calla left, I got a call from a detective in Nevada. They'd arrested her for running the same con on another family. This time, there was enough evidence to put her away for years. Margaret Hines testified. So did the family from Utah who'd been too scared to press charges the first time. And when the detective asked if I wanted to testify too, I said yes. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted to make sure she couldn't do this to anyone else. The trial lasted 4 days. Calla was convicted on 6 counts of fraud. She was sentenced to 8 years. I didn't tell Holt until after it was over. He didn't need to carry that weight. And that's the real ending. Justice happened. Quietly. Without fanfare. And my son and I kept having breakfast every Sunday. Now, here's what I need from you. If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you that families can survive betrayal, that trust can be rebuilt, that love is stronger than lies, I need you to do 3 things. 1. Hit that subscribe button right now, because this channel exists to tell stories like mine, stories about real people facing real betrayal and finding real redemption. 2. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's been lied to, someone who's been manipulated, someone who thinks they can't fight back. Show them that they can. 3. Leave a comment. Tell me your story. Tell me about a time you had to choose between staying silent and fighting back. Tell me about forgiveness. Tell me about family. Because these stories matter. Your story matters. And the more we share them, the harder it is for people like Calla to operate in the shadows. Subscribe, share, comment, and thank you for walking this journey with me. To everyone who's been betrayed by someone they trusted, you're not alone. You're not crazy, and you're stronger than you think. I'm Richard Hale, and this was my story. See you next story.